Tire GP viewers, thanks for being wonderful and a wonderful part of our community here. As a gift to you, we're ending 2024 with our top 5 moments from the season. There were many to pick from, but guess what? Shez and I went through the ardent task of picking 5 moments in no particular order. Here we go. How's that?
So Ammar, 2024 ended up being unexpectedly a season of unpredictability. It turned into an absolute classic. If only we had had that from the beginning, but we didn't. But we still had a whole heap of legendary moments to try and sift through. We've both come up with five. It doesn't even have to be your top moment. Just give me a moment and we'll have a chat.
So here's one moment. One of the first things I remember is what happened in your previously home Grand Prix, which is the Russell Alonso tiff, if you will, right? And I'm going to read verbatim here because some of you may not remember this, but there was a controversial penalty that Alonso had for what was called potentially dangerous driving, right? And so this is what the ruling reads like, right? While defending fifth position, this is in the race from George Russell on the final lap of the Melbourne race, Alonso accelerated or decelerated early on the approach into turn six. And if you're having confusion kind of keeping up with this, YouTube it, you'll find the video. The move caught George Russell off guard. He lost grip in dirty air, and then he was upside down. Many of you might remember that visual. So long story short, Alonso was handed a 20-second penalty, and that pushed him down from, I believe, sixth in the race to eighth in the race. And of course, the controversy was a lot because it kind of falls on the sort of culture war slash bias slash whatever you want to call it lines in that Alonso, as in typical Alonso style, accuses the stewards of, not in this particular race, but later on alludes to the fact that having the wrong passport can result in having penalties. So while it didn't apply to this particular race, that sort of undercurrent played out throughout the season. I thought this was a brilliant moment of the season. I don't know which way I fall on it. I would probably hold both drivers responsible, but it made for an exciting moment in an otherwise exciting race too.
Yeah, that was an interesting incident, but the moment, yeah, 100%. I was actually sitting on the straight, not on the straight, in the grandstand, um, following that incident, and on the screens you could see George heading towards that corner, just behind Alonso, and then you saw Alonso sort of slowly coming past the straight in front of our grandstand, but no George. And then it switched to the screen, and you've got George upside down in the car in the middle of the road, and you hear the radio like red flag, red flag, red flag. It was pretty dramatic, if nothing else, wasn't it? But we did a video on this, and we were looking at the telemetry as usual. Telemetry is everything to us at this channel. And I think on that one, we argued about it because I thought actually the penalty for Alonso, you could understand why it was given, because actually in that corner he came off the throttle, braked a lot earlier. Um, in essence, you could call that a potential brake test, and so I can understand why the penalty was given, but. Yeah, I guess the controversy there was just the fact that George actually didn't touch him, didn't hit him.
There's nothing. Yeah, there was
He
no.
went off on his own. So what was there to say that he wasn't going to do that
Exactly.
anyway? And I know we got a lot of we got a lot of
We
comments
got a lot of
for
feedback. And Chaz, I
that for
think
that
this
one.
was probably one of the first controversies of the season, if I remember correctly. I mean, this was the third race, I believe, right? And I mean, I guess if you want to call what happened to Max in Melbourne a bit of a controversy, not really, but like between two drivers, this was the first thing that I recall anyway happening in this season where there was a litany of those. I don't know, we'll get through some of those. So yeah, it was quite the moment. And I'm so glad you were there to witness it. And by the way, I'm so glad George survived it, like, and nothing happened. I mean, we're joking about it now, but that's only because everything worked out okay given the situation. We don't want to make light of that, but the moment itself was quite interesting. So
It was yeah, the whole thing was pretty scary, and um
yeah,
that radio was haunting, if you're going to put a word to it.
it really was.
Okay,
All right, give me yours.
okay, so my, uh, None of you are going to be particularly surprised that my top moment of 2024 didn't actually happen anywhere near a racetrack. It happened in the breaking news meme that F1 love to put out. It is, of course, Lewis Hamilton moving to Ferrari. Um, at the beginning of the season, before we knew how that was all going to play out, how Lewis's season at Mercedes was all going to play out, it was blockbuster. It was massive. It still is now. There's still people, me included, who can't wait to see what Lewis is going to look like in red. But in terms of how seismic that is, just in terms of Lewis's career and Mercedes, and then how it absolutely blew open the driver market, and we're still having tangible effects on the driver market right the way down in October and November of this season. It's huge because I definitely think that announcement, number one, just based on its own merit, is one of the biggest driver announcements I think we've ever had in the sport. Because it's not that Lewis is retiring, it's that Lewis is moving from the team that he's won 6 championships with, 8 constructors on the bounce, and is moving to what in 17, 18, 19 were ostensibly Mercedes's rivals. And you can understand why he's done it, but it's still a massive blockbuster move. And the story behind it as well, the whole Lewis not getting the extension to his deal, having a 1+1, and the subsequent comments that we heard coming out of Mercedes about Lewis's shelf life, and all of that played into that one announcement, which I thought was absolutely enormous. And the thing that was only slightly less blockbuster than that was the fact that it, alongside Red Bull having their massive implosion between Horner and Marco and Jos Verstappen, and all of the stuff that was happening on there, that WhatsApp gate, was the fact that because there was a free seat at Mercedes, it suddenly opened up the space for Max Verstappen to potentially come to Mercedes, and the intrigue that brought. So all of that, I think, was catalyzed by Lewis announcing that he was going to go to Ferrari at the beginning of the season. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I don't think this can be understated, right? I mean, you peel so many layers of this sort of massive story that isn't just massive for 2024. I think it'll continue beyond. I mean, transcendent driver, transcendent team come together under these circumstances. I don't think, and maybe there were insiders that had some inkling that this would happen. But if you had asked me coming into 2024, what would be one of those breaking items that would come through? I wouldn't have put this on there because Lewis had just signed a contract. I don't know, like in August the year before. No, so it wasn't like something that was sort of impending. Although we did hear rumblings of sort of the dissatisfaction that Lewis might have had with just doing a 1+1 contract. And I think that's pretty amazing. Now, if you're new to the channel, by the way, we have done several things on the Lewis Hamilton news, dating back to the origin of this channel, by the way, where we covered the whole Lewis Hamilton breaking news. Check that out. We'll put a few of the links in the comments as well. But we've done a whole slew of videos, including debates on what the future will look like, as well as a welcoming Lewis Hamilton video as well. So check that out. We'll drop that in our comments. Shez, I do want to say that as transcendent as that moment was, I want to pat you and I proverbially on our backs, right? Because this is when the channel started, almost a year to the day. We took off. We have many thanks to give to Lewis Hamilton for the breaking news, and it really kind of reminds me. I'm getting a little bit
Sure we do.
nostalgic as we call the year to a close, right? And it's been quite an amazing thing. So it's been. By the way, it's also been a storyline that's played out throughout the season, right? I mean, you look at the ups and downs that Lewis had throughout the year, and there's always this undertone, undercurrent. And then my moment in this relation is to see him coming into the Abu Dhabi race, right? I mean, there are pictures of him sort of changing the tone of his dress, I would say clothes, throughout the weekend, right? Where he transitioned from Mercedes colors to Ferrari colors as the weekend wore on, and then finally it seems like exited through. I don't know if it was choreographed or not, but exited through the Ferrari doors, referred to Charles as his teammate, even right at the conclusion of the race. So that that's quite amazing. The whole tension that was at Mercedes and everything, and just sort of going. And I think it's brilliant, a totally brilliant moment.
Yeah, agree. Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari, the gift that keeps on giving. Ammar, what's your
Yeah.
next top
Another
moment?
top moment for me is in relation to Lewis Hamilton, but it's in relation to the guy he's replacing, which is Carlos Sainz. And by the way, if you guys haven't watched this, there's a whole video on an interview with Carlos and I guess a mini documentary on sort of how all of that went down. And I would highly recommend watching Beyond the Grid and his interview there. That is very telling. So think about what we talked about with Lewis Hamilton, right? But the journey that Carlos had in the same time, he said on record that he was 99% sure he was coming back to with Ferrari, and who knows how long that would have been for, maybe a year, 2 years, whatever. To pivot from there to find this breaking news that Lewis is taking on his seat, recognizing the sort of the agony of being replaced, but also being replaced by a seven-time champ, which I guess is a compliment to Carlos as well, right? If you're going to get replaced by someone, it better be from one of the great GOATiest drivers, right, if you will. To have that, to come up at the first race, he did pretty well. I think he was on the podium, if I'm correct. Maybe even, yeah, I think he came in third, if I'm right, third or fourth. I'm not sure. Maybe right around there. You'll
In
correct me.
Bahrain.
In Bahrain, right? I think he
Yeah,
had
he
a
came
strong
third
showing.
because yeah. Do you remember because Charles had that brake issue?
Charles had that brake issue, and then I think he ended up. So I'm pretty sure he had that. Then to have appendicitis the week after, oh my God, and go through that. Then to come back and win Shez, your home race. And I know Max had a bit of misfortune in that race, but hey, and that was the only misfortune that Max had, by the way, I think throughout the season, right? It had nothing to do with him, by the way. You know, to win that race, I mean, even if he finished second, that would have been great. But to win that race, that was just amazing. And so that whole thing was, poetry in some ways, right? So this sort of bittersweet moment that again also played out through the season in the way Carlos spoke to us throughout the year. And I love the fact that I want to give a shout out to Carlos for being genuine and being candid in his comments, right? We often expect things from our athletes where like they're made of steel and they never show emotion and they're supposed to be a certain way. And I love the fact that he spoke about his pain. I love the fact that he kind of let us in behind the scenes and to show all the challenges that he had and overcame it. And I thought that Melbourne win was so well deserved, even if it came with a little bit of luck. Really well deserved.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it was that lucky. I think that even if Max had still been in the race in Australia, it wasn't an absolute given because the Ferrari in race trim was a pretty potent device, wasn't it? Um, yeah, Carlos absolutely covered himself in glory this season, didn't he? Especially when the Ferrari wasn't absolutely at its best, he was the one that was getting the most out of it. So, as I've said before, unlike at Mercedes and Alpine, where the prolonged divorce of a driver moving to another team manifested itself in poorer performances by that driver, Carlos seemed to like go into himself and gain strength from it. And nothing can be more graphic uh, as a representation of that as 10 days after you've had your appendix out, winning a Grand Prix. And the thing is, for me, I know what that feels like. I know what it's like. I know what people look like 10 days after they've
Yeah.
had their appendix out. It's not pretty. Like, our usual advice when you've had even a simple appendix is, no contact sports for 3 weeks. He was back in the car winning a race in 10 days. To be fair, like these are like highly trained athletes, and Alex Albon did something similar in Monza last year, or the year before last, didn't he? But he ended up still missing a race because of it. Um, in fact, well, so did Carlos. He missed Saudi,
Yeah,
didn't he?
he did miss a race, and
Um, but it's not it's no mean feat to be able to come back when you've had incisions in your abdomen and still be able to put the amount of pressure you need to put on the brake pedal while you're still sort of healing from those incisions. It's pretty impressive. So yeah, I mean, if there's any driver on the grid that is able to take adversity and turn it into something powerful, I mean, Carlos has definitely proved that he's your guy. So yeah, really, really impressed with that.
All right, give me
Uh,
yours now.
okay,
Next one.
so next one up from me is about Lando. So I wanted to talk
Ooh.
about Lando's breakout win in Miami because it was a huge moment. But for me, actually, as soon as that happened, he suddenly became a title contender. And for me, there were three moments which I'm going to package into one, which were Austria, Austin, and then Mexico. Because for me, that showed a gradual progression in experience in a driver that was competing for their first championship in real time. Max kind of stayed the same. Max, we've said this before that everything changes around Max, but Max maintains a very excellent level of performance. But everybody else has to acclimatize themselves to that reality, and that's what Lando was doing in real time in Austria. He just tried loads and loads of different moves again and again and again. None of them worked. Um, Eventually, resulting in him ending up having to retire from the race because of an incident. Yes, Max got a penalty for that, but ultimately, Max still got the most that he could have possibly achieved out of that. He was either going to get passed, um, or they were going to have a collision, and that's what ended up happening. It just happened that Max made the most of that. Then let's fast forward to Austin, the next big flashpoint where Lando has a go. And again, it's always the same thing. It's always Max defending and how he reacts to that. That's what the attacking driver has to contend with. And this time, Lando didn't crash out, but he did end up at the apex second, allowing himself to be pushed off the track and earning himself a 5 second time penalty, which raised massive controversy. Like, why should he get a penalty when he's been pushed off the track? But again, Max knew the rules. He knew that they'd essentially been made for him. And Lando, again, didn't make the most of it. But he did progress. He'd done a bit better than he had done in Austria. Then finally, we got to Mexico. And Lando unleashes his pièce de résistance. He's finally understood what it is he's supposed to do. He gets to the apex first in a move that was hugely reminiscent of Austin, still taking him around the outside. This time, getting to the apex first and passing Max. Max ultimately got so angry that well, however you want to put it, he drove Lando off the road, earning himself two 10-second penalties. Now, again, you can argue that actually Max still made the most of it, and Lando, rather than winning the race, ended up second because Max had disadvantaged him. But there was a clear progression there. And as much as I have criticized Lando, and I still have reservations about his ultimate potential in a championship winning situation when he has a car that's only an equal to Max or another championship contender. When he has the opportunity now, I think he has some data in the bank that will allow him to attack these situations differently. And that for me was a moment across three different Grand Prix, a little vignette, if you will.
I love how you captured that beautifully, but I mostly appreciate what you said here towards the end, which is I believe, and I've said this time and time again in previous conversations that you and I have had, and with others, that we as a general, a reflective community, have been very critical with Lando. Maybe in some cases, not us, but from what I've seen out there, really kind of over the line with critical with him. I believe that McLaren are a year ahead of schedule. All right, they've said that as well. And by extension, Lando was a year ahead of schedule. And this was his sort of training ground. Now, there's no guarantee that all of this experience will translate into a world championship. There are many things that have to go right in any given year, particularly in years where you are having 24 races. And now we're seeing that there are four teams at the top that are very close to each other. There are seven, maybe an arguably eight driver, depending on how you look at Liam's chances in the second Red Bull. But there are arguably, seven or eight drivers that could kind of get there. next year, if given the right machinery, if the tires are in the right window, if the weather is right. And we've seen all of these things play out. So I have felt that many times we in general have been very unfair with Lando. But I agree with you. He definitely has one of the top moments of the season. I also love, much like Carlos, that Lando has been honest, maybe sometimes a little more honest than he needs to be in terms of how he describes his performances. Ultimately, I love that from an athlete. I love that they come in and tell us how they actually feel versus just giving us some verbal garbage that doesn't mean anything, and just talking in abstract terms, right? Which most drivers do. And that's the beauty of Formula One drivers is they don't mind saying whatever the hell they want. Punishments be damned, right? I really believe that Lando is ascending. I also feel like we have given too much credit to Oscar without the results there. There's one result really in there that's probably convincing. Outside of that, Lando has made his mistakes, but he's also been dominant when he's had the car. And we can compare him to Max and Lewis unfairly and expect him to be in that realm in terms of winning a championship. But when we're comparing him to his teammate, I believe that he's firmly in the lead right now. Now, next year is a different thing, but he had that kind of season this year and is largely responsible for McLaren winning the constructors too. I mean, Abu Dhabi was a great example of just that as well. So.
Lest we turn this into the top 10 drivers of 2024 part 2, let's move on to your next.
Yes, my next
top
moment, I'm going to surprise you. This is sort of off the wall, right? My next moment is Red Bull across the season. Now, you alluded to this at the beginning. They started the season with dysfunction. Actually, let's back it up a little bit. They started the season with the RB20 being radically new, which now we know it was probably not the way to go. Yes, they won with Max, and we credit Max for a lot of it, right? But they started first in the constructors and they were third. And they could have been way worse than that had Ferrari done a better job, had McLaren done so whatever. That it is what it is there. But they started the season with the RB20 being radically new because they felt the need to kind of do something different from competition. Then came all of the WhatsApp behind the scenes ownership battle, whatever nonsense that was there. I'm not sure it's completely resolved, though it's faded away. But then you pick your moments throughout the season. I'm going to hold Red Bull responsible for Checo's failures. It's not like Checo just all of a sudden forgot how to drive. They have made the car in such a way that it suits Max and Max only. And I think Red Bull are the only team you can kind of describe in sort of saying that they have put all of their eggs in that one proverbial basket. And they did that throughout the year. Now, I'm not going to just sort of let Sergio off the hook because he is responsible for some of and maybe half of the gap between him and Max. But Red Bull have to own the other half. They made the car in such a way that he could not drive it, and that is also partially on them. Then let's fast forward to all the decision making that happens with the driver carousel, which Red Bull are a classic team, right? Look at how they let Danny Rick go. Couldn't even give him a proper goodbye. Look at how they let Checo go at the end of this season. Couldn't even give him a proper goodbye. Who knows what we're going to see Checo doing now? So he's going to be on the street, Shez, selling Red Bull cans. You know, one of those signs that say, go here, come here. Like, he's going to be that. Like, that's what they've turned him into. And by the way, he's going to be handsomely paid, which I love it. I love it, Checo. If they're going to do this to you, get paid, man. Get your bag. You absolutely deserve it. So you look at the decision making. And my final one, Shez, on Red Bull there, the decision making behind putting Liam Lawson in that seat ahead of Yuki. I want to say this to all of you Liam fans. This is not an indictment on Liam. I am not against him. I'm not rooting against him. I want him to be all the bit successful that he can be. But there is no good reason why Yuki should not have been given a seat for next year. You could have said this is a 1 year thing, a 6 month thing, whatever it is. Red Bull are good at swapping drivers all over the season. So that's not a big deal. But Yuki deserved that seat. And they have put him in this weird purgatory where he cannot leave them. And they couldn't release him early enough for him to look at other opportunities. And now he's kind of stuck. And I don't know what happens. Now he's going to have to get really lucky to be able to reprise his career somewhere because it's certainly not coming at Red Bull. But I absolutely hold him responsible for that. So Red Bull, in a nutshell, are my third moment of the season, if you will.
Yikes. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you in that Red Bull were the switch of the season, weren't they? They started off, Max won what seven out of the first 10 races, and they were looking like they were going to steamroller everybody else again. But suddenly the season just switched, and they just, they brought upgrades, didn't work, all of that. A couple of things that I do need to disagree with you on a little bit. The first is just that appearance of the car at the Bahrain test. Um, I think a lot of that was immediately a problem with the aero team trying to distance themselves a little bit from Adrian Newey. Like, we know what we're doing. We're going to do our thing. Adrian's just the guy the doddery old man that sits in the corner. This is actually, we're the technical team. And that really bit them. And it will follow. My next moment will follow on from that, I think. But the other is this whole thing about Red Bull making a car to suit Max. Yes, I think there's a little bit of that, but the main reason is, and they've said this themselves, right, that they realized there was a bit of a problem when they were back in Spain 2023. That's when they traced their development direction mistake from. But because Max kept getting the results, they just kept going with it. Now, okay, fine. You can potentially say, okay, that Red Bull's hubris and their arrogance and just allowing one driver to go off and win everything. But by the same token, why would any team move their development direction towards helping the less good driver? F1 history is littered with examples of teams that have done that. The best example for me, BMW Sauber, in fact, in 2008. After the Canadian Grand Prix, Robert Kubica was leading the World Championship, and they decided, actually, we're going to start developing our car for our second driver because he's not getting as much out of it. But it lost in the championship. So yes, I take your point that the car has been developed more towards what Max likes, but that's because Max is able to get more out of it. It's quicker in his hands, and the car in itself has a higher ceiling of potential with his driving style rather than Perez's. It would not be as quick a car if they followed Perez's driving
I
style.
don't disagree with those decisions, Shez, but then you look at what Christian Horner says in press conferences, and he literally buries Sergio at the end of the day, and they're literally pushing him out. By the way, I missed some key elements. You say all of that, but Christian Horner and management were the team that gave Checo a new contract this year. This year,
Yeah,
not last year, not the year before. They're the ones who did that, right? So to
yeah,
come
that blows my
come to us
mind.
at the end of the season and say, oh well, oh there's a big gap and we could have won. No, BS. I'm not taking any of that. They knew halfway through the season, whatever point, some point in the season, that they were not going to be able to win the
Yeah,
constructors
yeah,
because of the development issues they have, which everything you stated, I 100% agree with. The only choice they had is how can we hang on to Max, which is now their game. How can we hang on to Max for as long as possible going into the future? Because there's stuff happening in a couple of years that will make Max think twice, right? About staying there, leaving, whatever, retiring. Could be all
yeah.
of the above. Who knows?
Yeah,
So
I agree.
yeah,
And
I'm with you there.
the more I hear from Red Bull, the less convinced I am about their engine program for that year. Right, my next one, following neatly on from Red Bull imploding, is Adrian Newey moving to Aston Martin. Who the heck saw that coming? Well, turns out Red Bull probably saw it coming. Um, so we did an entire series on this in the middle of the season. And there's two things about this that I find fascinating. The first is Newey leaving in the first place. This is a team that he has basically built up since he joined them in 2006. Um, all of the championship wins that they've had have been in cars designed by him. The reason that the RB 18, 19, and 20 in the first half of the season was so dominant and so competitive is because he laid the foundations with the mechanical platform, understanding that in a ground effect era, it's not just about creating maximum downforce with those Venturis. It's about mating them to a stable mechanical platform that is stable in both pitch and dive. And the fact that Red Bull seemed to somehow forget that. And at the second that he decided, fine, I'm out, that was the moment, the Miami Grand Prix, at which Red Bull lost their first race on merit. and then continued a downward slide, I still don't think is a complete coincidence. But the second part about this is the fact that Adrian Newey has gone to Aston Martin, has got what he has been wanting ever since he became a competitive technical director, which is that he's got a stake in a team. And I think what that means in terms of his motivation and how much effort he is going to put into creating something championship winning at Aston Martin cannot be underestimated. This is directly led to Fernando Alonso basically saying 2026 is going to be my last season. I'm going into that season expecting it to be my last because it will depend on the machinery I'm given, and I'm sticking around that long because I think that Adrian Newey is finally going to give me the car that I need. Who can forget the picture of him basically bowing on one knee in front of Adrian Newey at the press conference? If that doesn't tell you how important a move that is, I maintain that this season, that's probably still the biggest single move of personnel, drivers included, of anyone from team to team. And we're going to see the results of that over the next 2 or 3 years.
I agree with you. I think that was a big moment, a massive moment. And for those of you that are new to our show, check it out. Shez has done quite a few videos on this. If you didn't know that Shez loves Adrian Newey, you would know just looking at those videos. I 100% agree with you. I'm also going to go on the record and say I am glad he did not join Ferrari because I know what that would have meant in terms of on paper, a partnership made in heaven. Him, Adrian Newey, that is, Lewis, Ferrari, the combination.
Oh,
I get all of that. I get all of that. But we have seen in life and in F1 that things that are written on paper don't always work out in reality. And I'd rather have Ferrari be on the path that Fred Vasseur set. So I just want to go on the record and saying that. And also, I want to warn all of you, if you guys think that Adrian Newey is helping Alonso win the championship in 26, you, my friends, Shez, you included, are wrong. Because the only reason Mr. Stroll, the Lawrence Stroll, brought Adrian Newey there is because he wants to see say it to me, his son win a championship.
progeny. I mean, sure,
Yes,
sure.
his son
He
win a
might
championship.
want that.
So
He might want that,
congratulations
but
to
he might
Lance
want
Stroll.
that. But I think there's more chance of
Yeah,
Yuki
no,
Tsunoda
no.
winning a
That see,
championship
you
in
know how
a
Alonso is
Aston.
so praisey about Lance Stroll right now. I can't wait to see what 26 looks like when Alonso knows that Alonso is a sneaky character. I wonder what kind of debates we'll be having then, because I can guarantee you that if Lance Stroll is in that team in 26, that car is being made for him to win. He is going to get preferential treatment,
May, may,
not Alonso, the
maybe
two-time
so.
mention.
Maybe so, but if Lance can bring himself to drive out of a gravel trap, or maybe not drive into the gravel trap in the first
I
place,
mean,
this might be a more valid
that might
argument.
be. That certainly might be. All right, let me from moving from gravel trap to that's a perfect transition into my penultimate moment of the season, if you will, and that is one Max Verstappen in Brazil. That same race
Oh,
where Lance managed to get the
wow.
car into gravel. Do I need
Wow,
to
wow,
say more
wow.
about what Max did in Brazil 2024? I mean, I don't need to say much. I mean, that was just epic, epic. It is a drive for the ages. It definitely will rank in the top 10 drives of all time. And that would be another fun debate to have at some point. But what do we say, Shaz? That was a race that no one would have, well, everyone would have thought to pick Max because why would we bet against it? Never bet against Max. The rain, cars going all over the place, people doing, excuse me, all kinds of stupidity in sort of pit strategy and whatnot. And what do you have Max doing? Charging in from behind, winning the race. As simple as that. Really, there's nothing to it. It is just an epic drive from an epic driver that has now transcended into the top five of all time, maybe even on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I think Max's drive in Brazil is why you can't like give give the title of best driver of this season to anybody else, really. I mean, it was an unbelievably good drive.
Well,
And again, like I'm all about nurture versus nature. I find talent to be an overrated um concept. He took everything that he had learned from everything he'd done in karts, everything he had in that race in 2016, where he was taking different lines to everybody else, going around the outside of Nico Rosberg in turn three. He took all of that and did the same thing. He knew exactly what he was doing, where he was placing his car on the track in the wet in Brazil. He overtook everyone to get from 17th to basically fourth. He got a little bit stuck at Leclerc, and yeah, sure, the red flag didn't exactly hurt his chances. But from there to put out to basically record fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest
17
lap,
fastest laps or something like that.
like and you can't forget the context within which he did that either, which is that Lando was on pole for the race,
Right.
and this was a race that where Lando could have really stamped his claim to the title. Instead, complete role reversal, and Max walks away basically with the title in his pocket.
Yep.
Unbelievable drive from an unbelievable driver, working absolutely at the top of his game. If anybody out there is better than Max Verstappen right now, I don't know who is.
No, no one, not even a debatable. All right.
All right, my next one, moving from the sublime to the just as sublime, I think. As a Lewis fan, I cannot leave this without Lewis's win in Silverstone. Like
Two Lewis moments in the top five.
it's just too much. It's yeah, but the Lewis to Ferrari thing is kind of like it's all encompassing. It just had loads of stuff that was relevant to the rest of the season and other drivers and other teams and outcomes of championship results and all of that. It was really important for that. But this was just Lewis after what 96 days or something, was it? Or 196 days, something silly like that. Um, winning again at his home race in a race that I still think was probably the best race of the season because it just had a little bit of everything. There were multiple drivers that at multiple times could have possibly won the race. The fact that it ended with a straight up duel between Lewis and Max just made it absolutely epic. And it had all the little radio messages, Bono, just stop talking. I got this, man. Just leave me alone. And then the outpouring of emotion, both from him, from the crowd, from everyone, from Bono over the radio. Like I still, even now, I've said it every time. I still get goosebumps just thinking about that happening. And sure, I'm a big Lewis fan, and yeah, I'm obviously going to love that. But I don't think there was a dry eye in the room when that happened at Silverstone in the summer. I've met people since then that had tickets and was sat in the grandstand. I go green with envy just thinking about it. But they said it was one of the best motorsport experiences they've ever had. So for it not to be one of the top moments of 2024, I think is churlish.
No, you didn't have to add the churlish. Okay, I, I would agree with you, and I would just add that the pain of losing is far greater than the joy of winning. And what that race showed, especially at the end, with all of the emotion, right, within the car that Lewis displayed at the end, outside of the car, everything at the end just basically showed how much pain there was in how 2021 went. I'm not here to relitigate that. I'm not here to say he deserved it or he deserved it, anything like that. All I'm here to say is that pain had not left Lewis, and the fact that they did not, Mercedes could not give him a winning car in damn near 3 seasons, right at that point anyway, was really really hard, and there was not much to show for really. So I think that kind of race showed it all, and I definitely agree. That was one of the best moments that you could have in the season, and one that I would argue Lewis really needed because, as he alluded to, he was questioning his abilities too, and I cannot imagine the mind of an athlete again. Shez, this is so humanizing, right? Again, these drivers, these are the top 20 drivers anywhere on earth that are driving cars at damn near breakneck speed that you and I would be sitting in there and we would have gone miles past wherever the breaking point would have been. But these guys to feel this way, this is why I love Formula One. Like that emotion cannot be understated from a driver that has more wins than anyone on paper. Like, can you imagine what that feels like? So for me, that moment transcended beyond the track, beyond the performance, beyond all of that. That was a humanizing moment, and I for one loved it.
Yeah. Speak for
All right.
yourself, Ammar. I wouldn't have missed the breaking zone.
I would have, yeah. So this is my final one, right? So now I have that final moment. So my final moment is exactly the same thing, but what I felt for my guy this year, and the only way that I can put it to you is the man from Monaco is the man for Monza. do I need to say anymore? Like, really? I mean, come on. If Charles Leclerc had a wish list, right? Number one would have been win the world championship, right? But he couldn't get that this year. It obviously is a lot of it just has to do with the car. I mean, you guys will come on and tell me, yeah, he made mistakes and all that. To be honest, if you look at the data, Ferrari were nowhere close to being a top team in the first half of the season, and really the middle third of the season too. But what Charles Leclerc did in Monaco was sublime. Yes, it was not a competitive race, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But if you just look at the history that Charles had at Monaco and the pain that was filled with previous results, qualifying on pole multiple times, not even being able to make it to the track one of the years in the race trip. So all of those things put together, this was a curse-breaking win. And I couldn't be happier for a guy that has been through so much in his life, right? A lot of times we talk about the adversity that Formula One drivers face in coming up to Formula One. The Charles Leclerc story, for those of you who don't know, is filled with so much pain and so much personal loss. And he said this in interviews too. It is just amazing. I couldn't have been happier for him. And if I thought I was going to be happier in Monaco, I was running down the street streaking, Shez. I wish someone would have grabbed that. Like after Monza, I mean, Ferrari win in Monza is just I don't know. There's no words for it. There is no words for it. And to see Charles on that top step was really good. And I really think that these two wins, and he's had wins since then, he won in Austin as well. But these two wins really, really cemented his position as Ferrari's leader at the heart. And I know it's going to be this tension next year that Ferrari will have between the two drivers because they're just both awesome in their own ways. But I really feel like Charles Leclerc, particularly in his Monza drive, showed us this sort of next step in his evolution, really being able to take the championship battle there. And if there's anyone that I believe deserves a championship outside of the two top guys right now, Lewis and Max, I think Charles is ready for his first as well, right alongside them. So yeah, that was my top moment from this year.
I thought we were doing no particular order, but clearly you had an order.
Well, I mean, this is my topmost moment. Everything is right next to
Everything
me.
else is
You know,
just minor compared
that's
to that.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, how can I argue with that? That was yeah, that was true. I think Charles had his best season this season, and those two moments were absolutely brilliant. And just add in the fact that he also won in Austin. Yeah, I mean, for me, he was definitely the second best driver of the season. I'm sorry, Amar, I'm not going to reopen old wounds. Okay, final one from me. Despite what you think of Oscar, I did think
Oh my God.
the moment my fifth moment of the season is Oscar's overtake on Leclerc. Um, I enjoyed it. It was really fun. It was for me probably the second best race of the season, just because of the tension from from the overtake and then the overtake onwards. It was just really fun to watch. But it also came after a run of races where Oscar and Leclerc both seemed to be in the same vicinity, but always Leclerc ahead of Piastri. You had it in Zandvoort, and then you had it again at Monza. And then Oscar, it seemed like he just had enough,
Oh,
and he just went for a move,
wonderful.
which in a lot of other drivers' hands, his included, he seemed to think shouldn't have come off with a high risk of just ending up in the wall on the exit. He pulls off an absolute blinder and then keeps behind Charles Leclerc for the rest of the season, for the rest of the race. Sure, you can talk about mini DRS, but that wasn't enough with a guy behind him with actual DRS. To stay behind him for as long as he did, and the 4 or 5 opportunities that Leclerc had, Piastri just placed his car absolutely brilliantly to keep him behind. So for me, that moment was the overtake, which was unbelievably good. And then the defense going onwards. Um, bring your mini DRS all you want, Omar, but it's that in and of itself. And we did a video about this too.
I,
Yes, I don't think it was right to have it, but it's not enough to explain why he was able to keep Leclerc behind for as many laps as he did.
I want to end this on a good note, but I cannot believe you're going to do this to me. You are extraordinary in your analysis in Formula One. You have a memory bank that rivals a library. You do excellent analysis, telemetry, data, blah blah blah, whatever you name it. And I could ask you a question about what happened in the 1984s. You could tell me that. For you to say that, I would agree. The moment of the overtake, fair. But for him to be able to defend with a mini DRS, by the way, that is not intended to be there when you are leading, right? It's not. This is not. Let's be clear. The mini DRS was working when he was the lead car, as in Oscar was the lead car, not the car behind. So
Yeah, but
to
Leclerc
say
had
that has
DRS.
nothing to do with it is just it's black.
I'm not saying it
I
had
can't
nothing
expect
to
that
do
from you.
with it. I'm
You
not saying
just
it had
said bring
nothing to
up
do with
your
it.
mini DRS. It's not my mini DRS. It's not Ferrari who
Oh,
put that
okay.
out there. And by the way, this was analysis that was thrown out by some McLaren fans showing the wing opening. I mean, that was crazy. Come on, you
Yeah,
can't
but
do that. Look, I'm with
that's
you.
not proof of advantage. Yes, I agree. He did gain advantage from it. I'm not saying he didn't. All I'm saying is you cannot say that the entire win was predicated on him having mini DRS.
The
That
defense
is an
was.
oversimplification.
But Chess, the defense
But the
was
defense
because
was
the
the
tire
win, wasn't it?
delta that Leclerc would have had would have been enough, and you know this. And then what happened as a result is, you're right. I mean, Charles drove his tires off, and then eventually had to hang on.
Correct.
And I hear you, I hear you.
Correct.
But okay,
That was the issue.
I
Right.
love to get
Okay.
that to me to end the year. That's great.
I have to because I cannot be anything if not logical. Right. Those are our top five moments. Tell us what you guys think. You must have
Yes.
had loads more moments. And I'm sure there'll be a list of your favorite drivers' greatest moments. We'll try to keep it at least fairly well balanced here, but let us know what you guys think. As usual, please like, please subscribe, please leave us a comment. We will read every single one and we will reply to as many as we possibly can. And we will see you guys in the next one.
Happy New Year.